had the sentence of death in ourselves, that we should not trust in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead, who delivered us from so great a death and does deliver us, and whom we trust that he will still deliver us. I want you to pay close attention to that 10th verse, if we can go right back there. Who delivered us from so great a death and does deliver us, in whom we trust that he will still deliver us. If you would, I want to consider for a topic this morning, God's got you covered. Look to your neighbor to the left and right of you and just tell them God's got you covered. Matter of fact, look at the person sitting in front of you or behind you and just let them know God's got you covered. Here in 2 Corinthians, the first chapter, 3 through 7, we find Paul writing this letter to the church in Corinth, and he begins to address them and give God another title, and he calls him the God of all comfort. Somebody say the God of all comfort. He begins to tell this church that the God that we serve is a God that will comfort you in the middle of your tribulations. The God that we serve is a God that will get in the middle of it with you when you're going through a storm, when you're going through a trial. Let me just pause and survey the room. Has anybody ever gone through a situation, and when you've gone through that problem, you knew that you weren't going through it alone because you had God on your side? Let me read verse 8 for you. For we do not want you to be ignorant, brother, of our trouble which came to us in Asia, that we were burdened beyond measure, above strength, so that we despaired even of life. Paul begins to talk to this church, and he says, you know what? I've gotten myself to a point where I felt like I could not go any further. I had no more strength, had no more fight left in me. And to cap it all off, I did not even feel like living anymore. Paul says, I don't want you to be ignorant. I got to a point, Brother John Nell, where I could not go any further. My strength was gone. I had no more fight in me. And to cap it all off, I didn't even want to live anymore. Has anybody ever found themselves in that place where you felt like you could not go any further in the storm that you were in, that you got to a place where you did not have any more fight in you, and then just to honestly tell the truth, you say, Lord, you know what? You can just call me home now when death comes. Y'all don't have to talk back to me this morning. But Paul tells us something about God. He says, God can raise the dead. That not only is God a God of comfort, but God is the God of impossible, hopeless impossibilities. Oh, that went. He's a God of hopeless impossibilities. What in your life is hopeless and impossible? Think about it. What in your life is hopeless and impossible? That's a situation for God. Look at your first thing Paul says is I want you to do a memory check. I want you to go and get you some remembrance. And I want you to look in your past, and I want you to deal with some experiences that God has delivered you from. Is there anybody in the room that God has delivered you from a situation? Paul says when you get to your trouble and when you're in your storm, the first thing that you have to do is remember how he delivered you. Remember that he did deliver you. Amen. Remembering that this storm, that this situation is nothing new, that he's done it before. It might be a different circumstance, it might be a different problem, but it's the same God. Chariots and horsemen. Yet, because you relied on the Lord, he delivered them into your hand. For the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong on the behalf of those whose heart is loyal to him. In this you have done foolishly, therefore from now on you shall have wars. Now let me break it down what's going on here. There's this King Asa, and he's the king, and all before this time he's relying on God to give him victory. And there comes another time where he goes into a war and he gets on sides with a king that he's not supposed to get on sides with. And because he trusts in this king, basically God comes back and says, because you forgot everything that I've done for you previously and went to somebody else and went to something else and allied yourself with something else, now you're going to have even more wars than what you had. And what God is wanting us to do when we face our struggles is take a moment and see how he delivered us from things that were big, from things that were small, but yet he delivered us. God is saying, I want to be the only one in your life that you believe can deliver you. God is just, you can't even understand the things he does. You just can't fathom. He's unfathomable. Has God ever done anything for you? And when you look back on it, you just say, we have a great God. But then the second thing he says is that God is delivering you. Paul takes it and he moves us into the present tense. Now, first, with remembrance, he was causing us to look back at our experience with God. Now, he's wanting us to take a look at our patience with God. Our ability to wait on God. Everybody say our ability to wait on God. Wait is not a position of fatigue. Waiting is not a position of defeat. Matter of fact, you get your strength in waiting. In your wait, you become stronger. You become better. Oh, y'all not going to talk to me? He not only tells us that God has delivered us, he not only tells us that God is delivering us now, but he says God will deliver you. He deals with our past, talks to us where we are in the present, and then he says, looking in the future, I want you to understand that God will deliver you. I know he wasn't going to do that. But Jesus says Satan wants you, and he wants to shake you. He wants to wear you out. He wants to wear your head out. But that we know Satan wants us like that. What trips me out every time I read this is that Jesus says, I prayed for you. And that's good. Jesus, pray for. How many of y'all want Jesus to pray? Because I know if can't nobody else get a prayer through, his prayer get through. Mama's prayer might not get through, daddy's prayer might not get through, grandma's prayer might not get through, your prayer might not get through, my prayer might not get through, but Jesus' prayer get through. And with that knowledge, Jesus does not say, Simon, I'm going to pray that the devil doesn't touch you. He doesn't say, Simon, I'm going to pray that the devil doesn't have you. I'm going to pray that you come out of it. He doesn't even say, I want you to be delivered out of it. He says, the thing that I'm going to pray for is that your faith does not fail.